In the late 80s and early 90s, Turtle Mania swept across the media landscape like a radical whirlwind from another dimension. Also known as Turtle Power, stemming from the popularity of the 1987 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon, the teens in green made their way from stewards of the sewers to teenage media titans. This cartoon brought a fresh and fun kid-friendly take on the comics characters created by Eastman and Laird in 1984, which featured 4 young brothers battling in black and white against a beautiful and gritty New York City, discovering the origins of how they came to be and taking on Oroku Saki, aka the Shredder, and his ninja clan the Foot for the very first time. The artwork in that original graphic novel is gorgeous and the story immediately captivating. The comic has an underground feel to it and features a much more serious and gripping tone than one might expect, having only known the Turtles from their animated format. Its combination of Eastern and Western storytelling mixed with 80s radioactive weirdness is a strange mutation indeed, and it just works. Everything emerges fully formed and is immediately iconic. All of this finding its way from a late-night sketch and shared amusement from such a ridiculous concept, inspired by the works of Frank Miller and tied to the mythos of Daredevil. The world of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was born, and soon, everyone would take notice. With the popularity of the TMNT growing, a new wave would wash over Saturday mornings as the 1987 cartoon brought the concept, now reimagined as a more family-friendly endeavor, into the homes of an entire generation.
Well.
This iteration, while chock full of 80s and 90s tubular tood, still brought in the core elements of the Turtles' world building and was a major milestone in TMNT history. Mixed with a hypnotically catchy theme song and more outrageous Saturday morning direction, it's probably the era looked most fondly upon, as it was a lot of people's first introduction to the pizza-obsessed Teenage Turtles. And with the explosion of popularity that followed, it's no wonder that toys, movies, and everything you could slap a turtle on would begin to take hold across the airwaves. TMNT became so well known, to put it into perspective, this franchise has now spawned 5 TV shows, 6 major motion pictures, a stage show, and a lot of weird things in between.
Take the holes with pepperoni.
And of course, with all of this came the games.
With Shredder's Revenge in our hands and the Cowabunga collection incoming, I want to take a look at the journey that got us from one to the other. Turtles games for a time were as essential to the platforms they were developed for, just as much so as Mario and Sonic, I would say. And all of the games on this list still hold up for me today. The Cowabunga collection will be covered with some notable games from the 2000s as well. All of this leading up to Shredder's Revenge and a CRT, because sometimes to admire what's present, you have to mix in a little bit of the past. So, let's get back to where it all began.
If the late 80s were a pizza, its perfect combination of ingredients would be a fresh marketable idea as the dough, a cheesy cartoon show as well, the cheese, and a fistful of toys, movies, and video games as the toppings. Arcades were all the rage, and the original NES was bringing the gaming experience into the living room. This was a time when Konami was king, and the idea of merging Turtles and cartridge shells was all but waiting to happen. And in 1989, this finally came to be, and if 4 baby turtles were to be made into video games, Konami was the ooze.
Prehistoric Turtlesaurus.
Released in May of that year under Konami's Ultra Games division, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the NES, aka Fierce Turtle Ninja Legend on the Famicom in Japan, would make its way into homes, and to play this game at the time of release was a dream come true. Notorious for its difficulty now, at the time this was still a revelation. Our favorite characters were finally here on home console, and it looks and feels like a proper Ninja Turtles game. As a first outing, it may seem a bit abstract compared to all that would follow, but the ambition of what they set out to accomplish is honestly impressive. Starting the game from a top-down perspective has an almost RPG-like feel as you make your way into different areas. Once inside an area, the game takes on a side-scrolling action game style as you make your way through hordes of wild enemies, exploring the sewers, and doing your damnedest to stay alive. Also RPG-like is having access to all 4 turtles via the start screen, which can be selected at any time. Utilizing different turtles in different scenarios can be key, as their weapons have different ranges and you could even attack in different directions, all while making these huge ninja jumps and managing platforming throughout the levels. Some might find the jumping a little floaty, but I like it. You can also manage resources as every turtle has their own life bar and can regain health when you come across delicious, revitalizing pizza. So switching characters to keep your team's life up can be useful. Pretty impressive stuff for the NES. Combine these mechanics with that classic Konami music and sound, and you'll be having a good time with this one. Until the dam. We don't talk about the dam. All in all, a solid first outing for Team Green. Difficulty aside, this one set the stage for the spell of the shell. Later on that same year, Konami would go on to raise the bar for all TMNT games going forward with its seminal release, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Arcade Game, which to this day is still regarded as one of the most legendary arcade titles of the era, and for some, of all time. As it turns out, mixing Ninja Turtles and beat-em-ups would be a recipe not long forgotten. Everything here is iconic, from sprite and level design to mechanics and music. The set pieces are wonderfully animated with lots of interactive elements and attention to detail that adds a lot to the experience. It was like you were playing the cartoon. This was as close to turtle heaven as you could hope to find for the time. Coming across one of these cabinets in the wild was like finding an actual Ninja Turtle. It felt mythical and larger than life. That being said, while it's still a ton of fun to play today, some of the sound design can be rather shrill and better, in my opinion, games would follow. Your attacks, for example, sometimes feel as they're moving through an enemy as opposed to connecting with them. It lacks some of that perfect keyframe hit detection that would find its way into later beat-em-ups. The difficulty also is a straight-up quarter muncher at times. Still, this is a game that should be played by all, at least for its historic significance in defining an entire generation. Next up, in 1990, Konami's arcade hit would find its way home with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game for the Nintendo Entertainment System. This being a port designed specifically for the NES with redesigned levels, characters, and a really well fleshed out experience overall. It's a version of the game that shares DNA with the arcade original, but translates over on its own merits into 8-bit classic greatness. I honestly have a lot of love for this game since it was the closest thing you could get to the arcade at the time, and being a home console version, I obviously spent a lot more time with it. For me, it almost falls into that Double Dragon Contra category of the home port being more charming than their Big Brother arcade counterparts. TMNT 2 honestly feels like a big step up from Turtles 1 on the NES, and should be commended for how close it actually comes to the arcade. The 8-bit music and again classic Konami sound stylings make this a title that's still a ton of fun to experience today. With action that's fast and fluid, great use of color, and honestly impressive 8-bit turtle pixels, TMNT 2 proves you don't need arcade hardware to have one shell of a good time at home. Following suit in 1991, Konami's Ultra Games set to put turtle power in the palm of your hand with Fall of the Foot Clan for the original Game Boy. This is a title I remember having some experience with, thinking the large sprites and fluid gameplay were very impressive for the time, and I still feel that way revisiting it today. Taking inspiration from Turtles 1 and 2 for the NES, the action is single plane side-scrolling like the first game with more arcade-like simplified attacks and level progression like the latter. The high jumping feels like Turtles 1, utilizing your well-trained ninja agility, and you can use shurikens from a crouch position without having to find a power-up, which is a very cool addition. Enemies attack in Contra-like patterns coming in from all sides, and it keeps you on your toes. Just hearing the classic theme song and Game Boy rendition is reason enough to give this one a try. This was and still is a great way to play Turtles on the go. Next up in 1991, also on the Game Boy, was Back from the Sewers. This game, being a direct sequel, plays more or less like Fall of the Foot, but with redesigned characters and levels taking more inspiration from the arcade game. You no longer have your crouch shuriken attack, but all in all, graphics look good and it's a lot of fun to play. Another solid outing on the Game Boy. After 2 portable releases, Konami shifted focus back to the NES in 1992 with Turtles 3: The Manhattan Project. This being the 3rd game in the NES trilogy, it stands out as being the only game in the now de facto arcade style introduced as a home console exclusive. It features the same style of play as Turtles 2 for the NES, but with all new levels, story, and no arcade counterpart. This game, while playing mostly like Turtles 2, does introduce some new elements. While pressing down in attack, you can now flip the foot in a manner similar to the original arcade, which you'll find yourself using quite a lot, sending foes flying for a quick takedown or using your reptile to throw projectiles for a great means of ninja crowd control. Presentation-wise, all of the fun and whimsy Konami had been steadily injecting into these games is on display here. Your character has great reactions to the environment, and the Foot Clan puts on an honest-to-God water ballet. You could tell they were having a good time making these games. All that being said, this one can also be a little on the difficult side, something that's probably a lot more manageable when you bring a friend along for the ride.
This is Cowabunga. But the turtles for your 16-bit system are Cowabunga!
Later in September of 1992, being the 2nd year of a new console generation, Konami was now setting their sights on the Super Nintendo. What would follow would be the culmination of all their work up until this point, and the release of one of the greatest games of the 16-bit generation, and for me, one of the best of all time. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Turtles in Time was actually released the previous year in 1991 in arcades, and then ported to the SNES in 1992. Now, I didn't mention the arcade up until this point because for the longest time I didn't know it existed. I'm not sure how I never came across that cabinet, but years later I would discover its existence with MAME and was very surprised and very excited to play it. The arcade plays a lot like a proper follow-up to the original, and if you love that game, there's only more to love here. In moving the game to the SNES, however, they would once again go on to produce a more fleshed out experience with different levels, bosses, rebalanced gameplay, and in my opinion, just a better and more iconic experience overall. TMNT4 on the SNES is the pinnacle of Turtles gaming and in every way embodies that timeless Konami factor that makes it just as fun to pick up and play today as it was in 1992. Characters look phenomenal and incredibly close to the arcade. The action never lets up with an infectious fluidity fueling every frame. Enemies seem to emerge from everywhere with clever details populating each new set piece. Level design and pacing is perfect with no one area overstaying its welcome. You can even change the color set of your turtles from cartoon to comic, and the options giving all 4 turtles a distinct skin tone, more resembling the toys of the time. Honestly, I could make an entire video on how phenomenal this game is alone, but there's more to cover, and as we'll see with Shredder's Revenge, I am not the only one who felt that way.
Cowabunga, dude.
Moving over to the Sega side of things, the Genesis, not to be left out, got its own TMNT game that very same year. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Hyperstone Heist is interesting as it reuses assets from its SNES counterpart, but is more a remix of Turtles in Time with altered story, remixed levels, and a more Genesis-like color palette. While playing exactly like Turtles in Time, the only major difference is the ability to throw enemies at the screen has been removed, and I find it much harder to reliably pull off the grab and smash attack. Still an excellent game, and another I didn't know existed around the time of its release since we were a Nintendo household and late adopters of the Genesis. When I did finally discover it, I was just happy to have more Konami Turtles beat 'em up action. If you had a Sega Genesis back in the day, this was a must-own, and it's still worth playing through today. Rounding out the Game Boy Turtles trilogy in 1993 was Turtles 3: Radical Rescue. Another strong entry in the handheld TMNT lineup, Radical Rescue makes yet another change to character design and seems to be the most well-optimized performance-wise. This being later in the Game Boy lifespan, it's great to see developers get the most out of the hardware. A little less linear in level design, but another solid entry on the portable machine, and a strong bookend to TMNT on the original Game Boy.
Round one. Fight!
Last but not least in the golden age of Turtles games is TMNT Tournament Fighters, released in 1993 and 1994. This time bringing the 16 and 8-bit era of the Turtles and Konami to a close, Tournament Fighters is interesting as every version is unique to the console it was developed for, with releases spanning the original NES, Super Nintendo, and Sega Genesis. Each machine would receive its own unique character lineup, stages, and musical differences. The SNES version being the game I had the most experience with, for example, makes great use of the softer Super Nintendo color palette with solid gameplay and sound. The roster is well-rounded with a more motley mutant crew than other versions, but is also lacking some obvious fan favorites.
Well, that was a crime, you purse-scrubbing pukes.
Stage design is interesting as it looks good but can feel a little odd for a Turtles game, like some of the stages were made for other fighters of the time. A turbo mode a la Street Fighter II can even be selected to speed up gameplay, which is a nice addition, and I recommend turning it up at least one for some turbo turtle combat.
Round one, fight!
Fighters over on the Genesis, however, really stands out for its roster and level design. Most welcome are the additions of classic Turtles companions Casey Jones and April O'Neil, with this inclusion marking the first occasion of both characters being made playable in a TMNT game. Stages also feel more fitting of the Turtles universe, with levels showcasing a wealth of weird. Tournament Fighters on the Genesis plays more like a mutagen-fueled fever dream, which is only a good thing. Lots of classic Sega-era tude help this version stand out against the SNES's more safe approach. Last but not least is the game of the same name over on the NES. This release makes sense as there were still a lot of original entertainment systems in people's homes during the 16-bit generation, yet is very surprising as fighting games on the platform were few and far between. Once again, the 8-bit treatment only adds charm to the overall experience, and considering the limitations, TMNT Tournament Fighters is a triumph on the NES. Color and sound are both great, and honestly, not knowing this version existed for the longest time, it's been a joy to check out here, and it's definitely worth taking a look at. Chock full of Konami ninja magic, you can't go wrong with TMNT Fighters for any system when you want to change up your TMNT game. And with that, the Turtles would take another vacation, maybe to Florida, and sit out the next generation entirely, while the Turtles cartoon would last until 1996 before being rebooted in the early 2000s as simply Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And once again, the Turtles would be reborn. Releasing the same year as the new cartoon, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the GameCube was my first taste of new Turtles of the time. Taking on a cel-shaded approach, this game looks phenomenal and really brought the animation experience home in a new way for fans. Honestly, I am a sucker for all things cel-shaded, and when used with the right pairing of elements, the technique really shines. Gameplay-wise, Konami looked to keep things in line with the arcade beat-em-up style the series was known for, but now in a 3D space for the first time. Performance-wise, everything feels incredibly smooth with 60 FPS performance and new ninja moves to battle all the back alley baddies. You now have your regular attack combinations plus a heavy attack maneuver, which is great for breaking up a hostile party. A dash maneuver has also been added, which feels great and adequately ninja-like, plus an uppercut-like attack which can be used to launch projectiles and enemies into the air. Shurikens have also made a return, and the fight mechanics in general feel arcade-like and solid. Sound design is also great with excellent music to keep the action moving and plenty, if not maybe too many, voice clips. This game, also following suit with Turtles in Time and Tournament Fighters, features a fun versus mode as a nice bonus. A number of sequels in this style would follow, and this being the only one I've experienced so far, I'll absolutely be following up on those games soon enough. This title is worth going back to. Check it out.
Yeah, awesome!
Next up on my list, coinciding with the release of the fourth Turtles feature film in 2007, is TMNT for the Game Boy Advance, this time being developed by Ubisoft. Graphically, the presentation looks fantastic in 32-bit with sharp colors and glorious GBA pixel art style. Gameplay is a return to classic side-scrolling brawler action, and they managed to fit in a nice array of attacks into a 2-button format. Beside your normal combination and jumping attacks, you have an upwards attack at your disposal and a launching kick attack, both useful for juggling combos or managing incoming enemies. Weapons and items can be picked up and tossed about, invoking additional mayhem, or you can just reposition your opposition, throwing enemies like in previous entries. One thing that's weird is collecting coins from your fallen adversaries. Is this how ninjas make pizza money? This of course can be used in an upgrade shop for various items. Music is also a standout, being very fitting for the 2007 game. This is one of the best Turtles handheld games in my opinion, and it still looks great played on any screen today, big or small. If you're curious, check this one out. Just one more before Shredder's Revenge I wanted to talk about, and the 7th generation is TMNT Out of the Shadows for the PS3. For whatever reason, I quite like this game. With its more garish approach to design stemming from the Bay-era movies with a mix of the Nickelodeon CGI show airing around the same time, Out of the Shadows can be a bit janky, but also a lot of fun. It's Ninja Turtles on the PlayStation 3 after all. That alone had me curious enough to give this one a try. This being a melding of arcade adventure-style Turtles and Arkham fight mechanics, features your Turtle of choice, chaining attacks against multiple enemies with combatants telegraphing attacks, giving your ninja sense a quick chance and an offensive counter. All 4 Turtles fight here as you make your way through levels, with each being accessible via the D-pad at any time. Switching your character at mid-fight can be pretty cool, and when your hit level is high enough, you can employ special moves and team maneuvers. Levels are mostly linear, with paths forward having to be lightly explored as you jump across rooftops, back alleys, and of course in the sewers. Gameplay can feel a little clunky with the camera fighting against you more often than you'd like, but when it works and looks pretty cool while doing so. Little details like how the turtle's eyes turn from normal while exploring to the classic pupilless design while doing battle I like. I don't know why, it also looks pretty weird. There's even an arcade mode for a more straightforward approach, but I find the main game more enjoyable and better suited to the mechanics set up here. There were other Turtles games for the PS3 and Xbox 360, but this is the only one I've ever played through. It's weird, but I like weird. Maybe you do too.
Power Surge!
And with all of that, we've come full circle. 30 plus years in the making, Shredder's Revenge sought to take us back to those golden years, offering a tribute to some of the greatest beat-em-up games of all time, while offering a true sequel to an era long past but not forgotten. Upon boot, this game wastes no time in laying out its mission statement. This is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles of old. Utilizing the power of current machines and a throwback art style leverages plenty of headroom to deliver a perfect blend of retro action with modern but not too modern visuals. Played here on a CRT, you could honestly mistake this being a lost game from the GameCube generation, and that is only meant as a pure compliment to its presentation. If Turtles in Time had a proper sequel a few generations later, this is exactly, in my mind's eye, what it would have looked like. You can feel the abundance of love for the source material in every frame of this decades-later follow-up. It's like the ghosts of Konami past took ethereal form and whispered in the ears of Tribute's developers. Following the also excellent Streets of Rage 4, Shredder's Revenge takes something beloved and familiar and adds just enough new and modern to make it feel like a truly worthy addition to the past while giving players a fresh take to sink your teeth into. Gameplay-wise, your character moves a little slower than Turtles in Time, but the tools you're given better reflects the more methodical approach you may find yourself taking to combat here. That's not to say the action isn't fast and frenetic as you would hope for. It's more like there's a thoughtful polish on familiar movesets with classic attacks joyfully making their triumphant return, and new moves offering fresh ways of play. Just unleashing a classic whip-it to foil those foot or winging a half-lit soldier into the screen warms my shell in ways I can't even fully explain. New takes on classic music tracks and levels also work perfectly to deliver the Turtles game we've been waiting for. I love the Channel 6 news building finally making an appearance in game form, for instance, but also love revisiting the Technodrome in disrepair, overgrown with wilderness cast to the crags of a forlorn Dimension X. Old adversaries, of course, come into the fray with new bads based in classic Turtles animation and comics making first appearances, and it's all a joy to behold. You can even for the first time play as Master Splinter, April O'Neil, and Casey Jones in a classic Turtles beat-em-up, with oddball old friends making cameos along the way. And that's all I really want to say for now about Shredder's Revenge, as it's something if you were even remotely curious about, you should really experience for yourself. It satisfies longtime fans and would still be a ton of fun for new players alike. So, if you can, warm up a CRT, polish off your Turtles toys, and spend a few hours enjoying what happens when some old school tribute meets TURTLE power.
You clogged my gun with anchovy!
Indiana Jones is a man of action, intelligence, and adventure. Making his way into multiple greatest film character of all time lists, his unwavering charm and distinctive silhouette is enough to elicit a sense of pure joy and wonder for fans. With a character so iconic across film and television, it would only make sense Indiana would follow his fortune into the world of gaming next. Early days would bring more abstract attempts, but in the case of Indy, some really phenomenal world-expanding entries would emerge as well. Releasing in 1992, LucasArts' Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis would bring an all-new point-and-click adventure to home computers of the time. Met with great critical acclaim and commercial success alike, Fate of Atlantis feels like a true expansion of the Indiana Jones universe. While not the first game to take Indy on a brand new adventure, it was most certainly the most successful in 1992. Capturing the essence of the Indiana Jones experience with its perfect marriage of point-and-click puzzle solving and classic Lucas PC pixel art. Still topping best of lists today, this title remains a must-play for just how much designers Hal Barwood and Noah Falstein get right. Originally conceived as a sequel story to Last Crusade, unhappy with what they had to work with, Lucas and Spielberg collaborator Barwood sought to develop a brand new story which was ultimately the right call, landing Fate of Atlantis plenty of accolades. Packed full of charm and a clear love for the source material, Fate of Atlantis embraces everything you'd want from an indie game. Early on, you're interacting with familiar faces, but soon meet new characters such as archaeologist-turned-psychic Sophia Hapgood, who joins Jones on the journey to unravel the secrets of Atlantis before those no-good Nazis get there first. Classic Indiana stuff. This interactive style of storytelling suits the character incredibly well, with all of your commands being refined to a single mouse click. Music and sound are also exceptional, with original compositions painting a beautiful soundscape of whimsy and playful adventure. Fate of Atlantis really is a delight to the senses, offering different paths of play and some incredible voice talent with Doug Lee as the voice of Indy. You'd be hard-pressed not to have a smile on your face 5 minutes into this game.
Is your electric bill paid up?
That was Nurab Sal. His spirit is close.
Don't try your psychic act on me. Suppose I gave this orichalcum business any credence, which I don't. Who knows where these feet really came from?
Shh! I'm getting something. Nurab Sal speaks.
In 1994, having developed a pedigree for adapting Lucasfilm works for the home console, LucasArts and Factor 5, following the success of their Super Star Wars line of games, released Indiana Jones' Greatest Adventures. Impressive in its scope alone, unlike the Super Star Wars trilogy, Greatest Adventures delivers all 3 movies on one cart, playing out like bite-sized vignettes from Indiana's most memorable scenes. Much is added, of course, to expand the gameplay, and this makes for a really fantastic side-scroller on the Super Nintendo. The 16-bit delivered here is top tier, with graphics and sound being a standout. Indiana feels right at home in an action-driven platformer. Indy's arsenal translates over well, with your trademark whip offering a nice range of attack, and can be used to cross calamitous chasms or reach higher areas. It can be your main item for combat, of course, but Indy isn't afraid to throw a grenade, knuckle sandwich, or pump somebody full of hot lead in the interest of archaeological preservation. Additionally, a roll maneuver can be utilized for avoiding obstacles, inflicting damage, or even maneuvering certain items. It's a really cool addition not seen in many side-scrollers, which can feel a little wild to use at first, but is adequately indie. Levels look vibrant with some incredible attention to detail, such as the way these leaves scatter under Indy's feet as you pass by. Sound design impresses as well, with some pretty great voice clips for the SNES.
Let's go.
And very suitable stage music. This game may also feature the single greatest game over continue screen of its entire generation.
I've lost it.
Packed to the brim with adventure to explore, this really is the best way to experience Indy in 16 bits.
What's this? An idol. Time to go to work.
Next up in 1999, LucasArts and Hal Barwood would return, this time taking a leap into the burgeoning world of 3D graphics with Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine for PC. A port developed by Factor 5 would arrive a year later to the Nintendo 64, and both versions offer a great way to experience Indiana in the third dimension. Building on Barwood's previous work, Infernal Machine takes Indy on another brand new adventure, with returning characters also making the jump to 3D, delivering a nice through line in LucasArts' expanding Jones universe. Doug Lee would also return as the voice of Indy, making this feel like a proper follow-up to Fate of Atlantis. Developed initially for PC, Indy's first foray into 3D adventure feels more akin to something like early Prince of Persia than, say, Ocarina of Time, requiring a more methodical approach from players with deliberate input being key. This method of control can feel a little rigid when starting out, but it's easy enough to get the hang of and can be very rewarding once you do. There's a certain satisfying rhythm to exploration and execution, with gameplay centering on traversal and utilization of Indy's inventory. All of Henry's hallmarks are here, with some thoughtful inclusions as well, the lighter being one of my favorites, especially handy in darkened areas, or just to show off impressive illumination in both versions of the game. Additionally, in your adventure bag you'll find anti-venom antidotes that counter the effects of creepy crawlers, and patch kits to keep inflatables afloat when doing a little whitewater rafting. It's a really nice mix of action and RPG in that way, and that's what's great about Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine. It makes me feel like Indiana Jones doing Indiana Jones things. Things are thoughtful when they need to be, and chaotic when the situation goes sideways. Audio design is interesting as you'll mostly be hearing ambient sounds, which also makes music and dialogue cues pop all the more when setting off certain events.
Now what?
Colors are rich on PC, and the art design in general straddles the line between cel and stop-motion animation at times. It makes for a beautiful midpoint between LucasArts' adventure classics leading into their later 3D works. Much like the arcs and idols of his most memorable outings, this early 3D entry is absolutely worth seeking out today.
According to the map, that stone head marks the secret entrance into the Lost City.
In the early 2000s, action games were ever evolving. As the sixth generation of consoles offered higher levels of fidelity and fluidity, the gap between software and cinema began to grow smaller. Developers The Collective partnered with publisher LucasArts, looking to bring a legendary adventurer into the modern age. Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb would release for PlayStation 2, the original Xbox, and home computers in 2003, honing in on the action hero aspects of the part-time schoolteacher. Aspiring to be the ultimate indie experience for more modern fans, Emperor's Tomb features a strong focus on combat and cinematic presentation.
There he is!
Character motion and animation is smoother than ever before, with a nice sense of tactile agility as you move throughout the world. Inventory is also key, with items being easily selected in-game, or by pressing an action button when icons appear on screen. This is a nice addition as it lets you quickly swap to the required item needed in different scenarios, which can be really handy when swapping so frequently. Level design is done really well, with linear paths forward being clear, open enough to allow for some exploration. And all the locales on offer are honestly everything you'd want from an Indiana adventure. As mentioned, with combat taking a front row seat this time around, fights are always a lot of fun and feel very on brand with Indiana's particular style of frenzied fisticuffs. And that's something they've captured really well throughout, as Indy is a man reliably quick to action but always flying by the seat of his pants.
This ought to even up the odds.
Down like hot.
From his posture to punches, this is something the developers clearly put a lot of love into and really nailed down. Sound and music are also great, with lighter accompaniments providing general background flair. While more bombastic orchestral tracks flavor action-heavy situations. Taking over for Doug Lee as the voice of Indy this time around is David Esch, who also does a phenomenal job at capturing the essence of our favorite archaeologist.
A chance to become the first man in the Emperor's Tomb? When do we leave?
A lot of love clearly went into delivering the full-fledged Indiana Jones experience with Emperor's Tomb, This game is all wits, whips, and fists, delivering what could be the most quintessential indie experience for the more modern fan.
There he is.
Last up in 2009, LucasArts would partner with developers Artificial Mind and Movement to give us one last mainline entry in their spanning saga with Indiana Jones and the Staff of Kings. Released for Nintendo Wii and PS2, with unique versions on the DS and the PSP. It's the Wii version we'll be looking at today, going all in on motion control to check out a different kind of indie experience. Starting out, you're greeted with a nice menu screen which sets the stage well. Art design is a kind of mix and evolution of the previous two games, with Indy being more animated than ever before, and facial expressions being much more lively. In regards to gameplay being an action-focused follow-up to Emperor's Tomb, Staff of Kings shares similarities when it comes to basic traversal and overall mechanics. However, in looking to place the whip more than ever in the player's hands, segments play out more like smaller set pieces, which works in favor of the Wiimote and nunchuck combination, as motion control is used often, so the bite-sized gameplay beats don't burn you out on waggle. And this works well as situations are changing up often enough, so each new area feels fresh. You will of course be snapping your Wiimote to control your trademark bullwhip, which feels fun and works pretty much just as you'd imagine. The developers did get creative here though, and you'll be using key motions to do lots of clever things. My favorite early on is when you come across an unlit torch, and sweep your Wiimote to simulate sparking a flint to get a fire going. Combat being a large focus once again means punches and attacks will be performed using the Wiimote with jabs, hooks, and uppercuts, all having their own stabbing, swinging, or rising motion. Environments are also more interactive than before, letting you pull awnings down on enemies, unleash traps, or smash heads into whatever breakable object occupies your closest vicinity. Keeping your eye out for icons will let you know what you can and can't interact with, but chances are if it looks like you can pick it up or shove a head into it, you can.
You're dead!
This makes for a lot of fun as you play Maestro, trying to direct the perfect Indiana fight sequence. Outside of throwing fists, you'll also be using the Wiimote upright like a flight stick as you navigate canyons and dogfight enemy planes. Indy's sidearm also gets special attention with plenty of shooting segments seeing you maneuver behind cover, point, shoot, and blast away. These can be really enjoyable as well, with solutions to move forward not always being immediately obvious, and feel like a fun play on classic point-and-click Indy. Speaking of which, LucasArts offered a very cool addition to players exclusively on the Wii, with the Fate of Atlantis being included as an unlockable, which would be worth the price of admission alone when picking platforms. Staff of Kings blends all of LucasArts' previous work into a fun, more arcade-like Indiana Jones, with gameplay that tries its hand at translating the classic Indiana thrill ride more directly to the player. It's a good time for fans and offers a fresh take if you're willing to answer the call to action. This title would bookend the Indiana 3D saga, but with a character as beloved as Indy, who knows what the future holds. New adventures may still yet lie over the next horizon. But if these treasures truly are the last of their kind, that's okay, because they stand tall and are easily unearthed today.
Здравствуйте, товарищ. Open the door. I'm here to deliver supplies, you know, dig stuff. Whatever you need, I've got it.
The Legend of Zelda is a storied series long revered for its imaginative artistry and one-of-a-kind design. Unmatched in its ability to maintain a high level of quality across decades of milestone releases, the franchise continues to defy expectations to this day. Embracing bold artistic choices has proved successful for the series, delivering powerful creative visions that capture the attention of new and old game players alike. And in celebration of those many looks and legends of Zelda, let's take a look at my top 5 favorite Zelda art styles. Released in 2006, Twilight Princess is an interesting midpoint in the 3D Zelda era. Beautiful in its own right, this title takes on a more traditional dark fantasy approach in its design, answering a call of sorts from fans of Ocarina of Time to continue on with a more matured approach. Detail is dialed up in this generation as monsters look especially menacing, while Link and his fellow Hylians sport a more soft and elvish look. Hyrule itself here is bathed in a nice delicate bloom, which adds a dreamlike quality to the presentation, further enriching the fantasy atmosphere. Colors are slightly muted yet still pronounced where needed. It's an interesting mix of a more stark yet still vivid take on a Zelda title, striking in its approach to dark magic while maintaining the lighter essence of what makes the series' simpler way of life so appealing. Twilight Princess finds a nice balance between high fantasy and surreal naturalism. I especially love how ornately weird some of the design can get. At times, it can almost look gothic or medieval with a darker bite than you might expect. All in all though, a phenomenal Zelda presentation from top to bottom, and a very unique moment in the history of the series. Going back to 1991, A Link to the Past would take the original top-down Legend of Zelda to a whole new level. Revered as the pinnacle of early action RPG aesthetics, the impact of this SNES entry can't be understated. As prime pixel art from the 16-bit era tends to do, this game's style has aged incredibly well. A masterclass in 2D artistry whose influence can still be felt across the medium, this title delivers on all fronts the best aspects of the generation. With a strong focus on vibrant primary colors and distinctly pleasing Super NES tones, Link to the Past manages a creative vision that feels ageless. From its world map to distinct character and area design, every refresh feels like a piece of frameable retro game art. A well-woven tapestry evolved from the original 8-bit release, Hyrule's colorful charm really found its footing here. Blazing a trail in 1998, our first 3D entry, Ocarina of Time, blessed CRT screens the world over. The sheer magnitude of what was accomplished here is astonishing. Art direction is superb, really bringing to life what would become an overarching design philosophy for the series going forward. This title for me also offers one of the most cinematic Zelda adventures to date. With its deep earth tones and rich environments, Ocarina of Time looks like a storybook shot on film, especially when viewed on era-appropriate displays. As fairies fill the air in Kokiri Forest, or you watch the sun set across Hyrule Field, it's easy to get lost amidst the wonder and purity of Ocarina's design. You can almost feel the winding tendrils twisting up trees, or the heat rising from the depths of Death Mountain. With a world so well fleshed out, its immersive nature gets me time and time again. I even love the pre-rendered backgrounds in certain areas, as I think they play nicely into the storybook atmosphere set throughout. It should be noted the 3DS version offers an updated take on Ocarina's artistry, which is a must-play as well. A bountiful masterpiece of untethered imagination, Ocarina of Time remains an absolute triumph today. "2017's Breath of the Wild will easily be a lot of people's #1 entry, and for very good reason. With its lush presentation and stunning use of color, this game's vision and execution for all intents and purposes is perfection. As the time of day and fluctuating weather imbue Hyrule with a sense of living, breathing atmosphere, the sense of natural majesty its artistry conveys is really something to behold. From its ruined structures to warm villages, the land tells a story everywhere you turn. Its mix of cell shading and modernist design feels like the truest translation to date of Zelda's original concepts, and is a celebration of all that came before it. Breath of the Wild, even just while standing still, manages to look like poetry in motion. A modern marvel of inspired design, this game is proof that a series decades old can still feel completely brand new again. "2003 would see the boldest reimagining of Zelda's iconic art style to date with the release of Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. And for me, this one absolutely won me over. Controversial then as longtime fans expected a direct follow-up from Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker really showed that in the eyes of Nintendo, Zelda wasn't just for one generation, but for every new generation as well. A stunning showcase for cell shading, this game was the first time I remember seeing the technique in action, and I feel like this still looks like something that could come out today. For fans that grew up in awe of FMV titles like Dragon's Lair, this game finally delivered on a long-time desire to see in-game graphics reach animation authenticity. Beautiful and bold in motion, with colors more in line with Link to the Past, Wind Waker paints a captivating world of swords and sorcery, as told upon the high seas. The way items explode from colored orbs or enemies erupt into plumes of dark fog always delights. Especially when viewed on a CRT in its original form, the animation style really sells, as this was the target means of display for the time. Not to say the modern HD release doesn't look incredible as well, but it does take on a more CGI animated style, which still absolutely works in its own right. Wind Waker wins my #1 spot simply because it puts a big dumb smile on my face every time I load it up. The retroactively named Toon Link shows so much character in every frame, and the game really captures the feel of an animated classic. It also inspired my love for pretty much all things cel-shaded, and just bowls me over with its unique look every time I set sail on a new adventure. Godzilla has reigned supreme since first emerging in 1954. This megastar of wanton destruction kicked off a kaiju craze for creators Toho, ushering in an age of monsters that's endured across generations. And with the rise of the tokusatsu giants, Godzilla 2 would grow beyond the world of cinema, making his presence known across comics, cartoons, and of course, into video games. With the return proper of the legendary Monster King setting the clock back to -1, it's time to sit back and take a look at some of the more memorable entries in Godzilla's gaming library. First off, releasing in 1988, we have Godzilla Monster of Monsters for the NES. This early game from Toho serves up some hybrid gameplay as you team with Mothra to fight off alien invaders and battle giant space monsters. You start on an isometric game board and choose a character to move a limited number of spaces. Landing on a space enters a stage, and here things take on a side-scroller action style. Your goals in these levels are simple: fight your way to the right, destroy the alien armies, and survive. Godzilla can punch, kick, and swing his tail, while Mothra shoots projectiles. Both characters get a special attack on the start button, and these will come in handy. Once you clear a level, it's back to the game board, and if you find yourself close to an opposing enemy, you can fight Mono Monster, and this is pretty cool, featuring lots of Toho giants in an 8-bit free-for-all. Clear as many boards as possible, defeat the enemy monsters, and that's the game. It's simple, but it's fun. The large sprites convey a good sense of scale for the NES, and the music sets a unique and spacey atmosphere. I've always liked this game as it too feels like it came from another planet. There was a sequel that takes on a real-time strategy approach, but I'd recommend playing this one first. Next up in 1993, developed for the Turbo Duo, we have Godzilla Battle Legends, which is a one-on-one monster fighter with an awesome presentation. Toho on the Turbo delivers a nice selection of classic characters when playing versus, but you'll play as Godzilla only in single player. Starting a match, you get these suitably epic scrolling title cards while the game loads, and then it's into the main event. The game plays like a simplified Kaiju Street Fighter 2, which is only a good thing, and you get a good amount of attacks with the Turbo's 2-button pad. Depending on which monster you're fighting, Godzilla will take on the era-appropriate look from that battle in the movies, which is a really cool touch, and you can tell there's love for the franchise across this game. The design in general looks excellent, and the CD quality soundtrack adds a lot to the experience. This entry is top tier 90s Godzilla gaming, and I highly recommend, if you can, fire this one up. Then in 1994, Godzilla Monster War made its way to the Super Famicom in Japan, and this is a proper sequel to the Turbo Duo game. For the most part, you get more of Battle Legends here on a different platform, still retaining the great action, graphics, and sound, but it does lose that CD soundtrack. The fighting flows a little faster on Super Famicom, and the extra buttons are put to use on that pad. All in all, a really nice package, and of course being 16-bit Nintendo, you get some cool Mode 7 on the map screen. If you like Battle Legends, Monster War is just more of what you hope for. I recommend playing them both, but I do like my Titans on the Turbo just a little more. Moving into the 3D age, Sega in 1998 released Godzilla Generations on their new powerhouse console, the Dreamcast, as a launch title in Japan. Playing almost like an early tech demo, your objective here is as straightforward as possible: be a giant monster and destroy. You play as Godzilla or Mechagodzilla to start out, with more monsters unlockable throughout your play. Embracing a cinematic presentation, you must meticulously wipe out everything in sight, with buildings, army men, and alien spaceships standing in your way. Your character controls like a massive tank, which works to convey the heft of your giant as you carve a path of destruction across different areas. You get the official Godzilla theme while unleashing mayhem on multiple cities, and it feels the most movie-like in that way, capturing the feel of the Toho classics. Clearing a stage does require some attention though, as your monster accepts no less than total destruction, with every tree and piece of civilized engineering needed to be completely wrecked before you call it a day. Honestly, this game could be called a kaiju walking simulator, and I have no problem with that. It makes me feel like I'm directing shots for a throwback Godzilla movie or controlling a fun screensaver, and that's really all I need. As an early game, I think it was meant to be more of a fun demo than a whole fat experience, but that doesn't mean it isn't fun. Check this one out. Then in 1999, Sega fans got a follow-up with Godzilla Generations Maximum Impact, also on the Dreamcast. While technically a sequel, this one plays completely different, taking out a rail shooter approach, which is a neat idea and a nice change of pace. You aim with a cursor and mark targets to unleash your atomic breath on, not dissimilar to the way you aim in something like Panzer Dragoon or Rez. Once you learn the timing of marking your targets with the release of your destructive blast, the game becomes a lot of fun. I really like the nighttime mood, and you get some sharp graphics with some great music driving the action. You'll take on a boss featuring one of Toho's rogues at the end of every level, and the whole experience just feels arcade-like and fun. The cinematics are my favorite kind of early CG FMV, and just like Generations, I like how right to the point everything is here. They really kept it lean and mean. With a fresh take on just what you could do with Godzilla in a video game, Maximum Impact makes for a solid good time. Godzilla and Friends have gone portable more than a few times over the years, but the best handheld experience you can have outside of watching the official release of Final Wars on PSP has got to be Godzilla Domination on the Game Boy Advance. Released in 2002 as a companion game to the next game we'll get to, Domination, developed by WayForward and published by Atari, takes on more of a Saturday morning cartoon style, and they did a fantastic job. You have 6 selectable monsters to choose from, and gameplay is a classic 2D throwdown. Each character has their own attributes like speed, range, and attack, with power-ups popping up as well. There can be 2 to 4 characters on screen fighting at once, and the stages have a nice open feel to work with this. A few levels have their own modifiers like slippery ice or low gravity, and these add a little extra flavor. The game also supports multiplayer via the link cable, which I imagine is a good time. The 32-bit art style still looks great today, and it's paired with some really excellent music to keep things lively. In Japan, this game got some changes, with Godzilla, Mechagodzilla, and Mothra all getting redesigns to coincide with the then upcoming release of Godzilla Tokyo SOS in theaters, and it's cool to see the differences. Either way you play though, Domination offers the best way to keep Toho's monsters in your pocket. Also in 2002, releasing on Nintendo's GameCube, we have Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee, and this is the real deal. Equal parts silly and satisfying, Melee is like the WrestleMania of Godzilla monster brawlers. Similar to Domination with a bit of Saturday morning cartoon feel, here an alien race is taking control of the monsters, and you get this enjoyable intro setting things up. You've got 11 monsters to choose from, with more unlockable in adventure mode, and once you choose your go-to, it's a no-holds-barred until you're the last monster standing. Everything looks great and plays incredibly smooth at 60 FPS on the GameCube, adding to the over-the-top arcade feel. The monsters all have their own attacks, stats, and specials that fit their personality, and you couldn't ask for much more. You get different eras of Godzilla to select from, and the whole experience feels like a long gestating love letter to the MonsterVerse as a whole. The sound design works just as well, and I like how they went all in on just making the most enjoyable Godzilla game possible. It's absolutely no more or less than it needs to be. There's also some different modes of play here to keep you going, and you can play 4-player simultaneous versus, which I'm sure is a blast. The game did get a few sequels like Godzilla Save the Earth here on PS2, which is mostly more of the same with graphics that are maybe a little more detailed, but the frame rate isn't a match for GameCube. Still incredibly fun though, and there was also Godzilla Unleashed rounding out the trilogy, which looks like it runs better on Wii than PS2, but I only have the PS2 version to show today. Either way, you can't go wrong with any of these games, but Destroy All Monsters Melee is still king among the three.
Monsters, fight!
Am I still on? Oh. Well, we now return you to whatever it was you were doing. Idiots.
In 1996, Star Wars was mostly in pop culture's rearview mirror. Having wrapped the original trilogy 13 years prior, fans had little hope of seeing something new emerge from a galaxy far, far away. And yet, unbeknownst to all, something was brewing at Lucasfilm. In December of 1996, just 3 months after launch, Shadows of the Empire released exclusively on Nintendo 64, and just like that, Star Wars was back.
I've seen pulse cannons and gladiator droids. I've seen Beggar's Canyon and Imperial sewers. I've seen dead ends and infinite space. I've seen 360 degrees of tomorrow, and for once, lived to tell about it. Because I've got the ultimate fighting machine.
Players would take on the role of Dash Rendar, a roguish mercenary aiding the rebellion with his trusty blaster, cool ship, and outstanding Star Wars name. The story is set up through these wonderful hand-drawn animatics, showcasing Dash's relation to the known heroes as he takes part in the Battle of Hoth before setting out on his own journey. And right from the bat, this game comes out swinging. Putting you in the pilot seat of a T-47 airspeeder, the 3D world comes alive in a way previous games could not yet touch. Offering impressive immersion and sound ripped straight from the Lucas library, it felt like you were truly participating in the Star Wars saga for the first time. Bullseyeing probe droids, laying down fire on AT-STs, and tying up Imperial walkers had never felt so good. The game gets you hooked from the first stage, and then changes things up every chance it gets. The game now takes on its primary third-person action shooter style of play, where hokey religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster by your side. You'll flip lots of switches, unlock doors, and dodge wampas while picking up different types of power-ups, ammos, and health packs. There's lots of familiar Star Wars iconography to be found, but the levels are all fresh and inventive, keeping you engaged the entire run through. The sound and level design keep you immersed in the atmosphere, and there's more to do than just beelining it for the end of a stage. Exploration is encouraged through challenge points that are sometimes hidden or just out of reach, giving players free rein to approach play as they see fit, seeking out secrets if you like, or mainlining it if you want a more straightforward experience. You can even play from a first-person perspective at any time, which was a very forward-thinking feature for the era. There's so much to keep things varied, it's honestly impressive. Shaking things up, you get to pilot different crafts such as Dash's Outrider, where you'll sometimes be in the gunner seat while Lebo takes the wheel, and other times given full 360 degrees of control. You'll whip through the streets of Mos Eisley on a swoop bike and thread the needle in Beggar's Canyon, and it all feels wizard. Speaking of impressive size and scope, the levels all have a nice sense of verticality and space for early 3D that really captures the retro-futuristic design language of the Star Wars universe. The trademark haze and fog of the N64 only work to add a more filmic quality to the presentation, and you'll never hear me complain about graphics on this system. I love everything about the way games play in the 64. Story-wise, it's a treat to see how they wove new ideas and characters into established canon, and it does a lot of things first that Star Wars has been trying to do more recently. All in all, Shadows of the Empire did everything it set out to do. It found great success and showed how hungry fans were for new tales from the beloved galaxy. It expanded the story just enough while keeping everything intact, and never forgot to be just a fun video game. The best of Star Wars 3D gaming roots can be found right here. The game did get a PC port 1 year after the N64 release, and there's an excellent updated version available on GOG that's absolutely worth checking out. This one is easily in my top 5 Star Wars games of all time, and I absolutely advocate for a live-action Dash Rendar. So grab your blaster, put your brains and bravery to the test, and fight to bring light back from the shadows once again.
For Star Wars, Shadows of the Empire. The cruel crime lord Shizor directs the carbonite capture of Han Solo and his imprisonment aboard bounty hunter Boba Fett's battle-ready Slave One. Now, Luke Skywalker goes undercover with Soldier of Fortune Dash Rendar as he rips through space in his battle-transforming Outrider. But can they stop Slave One in time? It's the ultimate ships for the ultimate battle. Dare to enter the shadows. Star Wars, Shadows of the Empire. Figures and vehicles each sold separately from Kenner.
October is here, and one of my favorite things to do when I get the time is just spending the day moving around my different setups, feeling a mood, trying out different random games, and of course, getting into some classics. In that spirit, I wanted to share a more off-the-cuff look at a few titles that fit the season that I recently got to sit down and enjoy. So, as Halloween creeps closer, here's some games that slay you may want to play. First off, a series that's synonymous with classic monster slaying, here's Castlevania The Adventure Rebirth, released digitally in 2009 exclusively on the Wii. This lesser-known entry is technically a remake of the Game Boy game from 1989, but is really its own thing, and it is awesome. Part of M2's trilogy of Konami Rebirth games, it hits the mark on everything you want in classic Castlevania. As Christopher Belmont, ancestor of Simon, you pick up the whip to vanquish vile creatures on your side-scrolling quest to find and defeat Dracula. I've always preferred the pure action-adventure entries over the Metroidvanias, and this game is a testament to that classic style of play. Control here, of course, feels spot on as you manage some platforming and contend with all manner of ghouls and resurrected evils. You can collect power-ups and secondary weapons to aid in your attempts to best Dracula's armies, and that's really all you need. Sound design, as you'd imagine, is phenomenal, with arrangements of classic Castlevania music flavoring the action. Difficulty also feels just right, as you always want to try again if you die, with levels that look the part and are just a lot of fun to play. Perfect 2D ambiance with lots of eyeballs, bats, and skeletons to battle your way through. I'd call this one a must-play. Moving over to some gothic horror on the 64, we have Nightmare Creatures for the Nintendo 64. Taking place in London in the year 1834, the streets run wild with beasts and the undead. A devil-worshipping cult has seen their experiments turn twisted, and you must select your character and take to the city to stop these hellish fiends by any means necessary. Playing out like a 3D adventure brawler, you'll make your way through the old world darkness, unlocking paths forward and dispatching grotesque monsters as they come. Melee is your main focus of attack, with an automatic lock-on system as enemies approach, and you'll find secondary weapons here as well. You can evade in different directions, and knowing when to lunge in or hold back will prove key to your progression. You have an adrenaline meter that fills with your kills, and you'll want to keep this up to survive. Kill as many as you can to clear out a level, and move on to the next. Sure, control can be clunky and there is some low-budget jank here, but there's fun to be had as well. The dark shadows, muddy textures, and hazy fog of the early 3D work in this aesthetic, with jagged-edge monstrosities coming at you in jittery, unnerving fashion. The mechanics and gameplay click given a little time, and I wanted to keep going the farther in I got. Horror games on the N64 are few, and Nightmare Creatures, I think, deserves a playthrough. Also on the 64, giving fun, spooky vibes, is Scooby-Doo Classic Creep Capers, and this one really surprised me. As Shaggy, you pal around with Scooby-Doo, doing all the legwork for Mystery Inc. as you hunt for clues, trying to piece together another haunted whodunit, as those meddling kids tend to do. It's set up in classic point-and-click adventure style, so finding and using items in the right places is how you play. And it's just a really pure and goofy good time. You find this headdress, for instance, and use it to make your way past the haunted Black Knight in the appropriate exhibit, or have to retrieve a kidnapped Thelma's glasses before she can make an escape. Stuff like that. There's a lot of great Hanna-Barbera references, and it's all just really well put together. Scooby fits the spooky season, and I honestly recommend this one for some lighthearted October action.
Look, Daniel, it's the key. This will remove the barrier between life and death.
Moving back to the Wii, here we have House of the Dead 2 and 3 Return, and this disc is such a good time. Most people know House of the Dead from the arcades or Dreamcast, but this light gun shooter feels right at home on the Wii. Known for its perfect blend of ghoulish gunplay and outrageously bad voice acting.
We're meeting G over there.
What? These Sega classics are guaranteed to entertain. Having personally spent a lot more time with the middle game, I wanted to set my sights on number 3, and I think this is a worthy and really fun follow-up. Starting out shotgun in hand, House of the Dead 3 sets you up feeling a little more powerful, which makes for a great pick-up and play experience. Everything from previous games makes a return, from its excellent level and monster design to the so bad it's good back and forth between characters.
Gee, above you! Well, he certainly is persistent.
Reload! Gameplay is arcade perfect, which means the action comes fast and fluid as you try to make as many undead explode before your next reload. House of the Dead is like being on a roller coaster ride of green guts and malevolent creatures gone wrong. It's the kind of game that makes you think maybe you wouldn't survive a zombie apocalypse, but it might be fun to try. House of the Dead 2 is certainly the more talked about entry, but Dead 3 is just as deserving of your time. Moving over to one of my favorite systems of all time, I wanted to check out Alone in the Dark, the new nightmare for the Sega Dreamcast. This survival horror game, developed by Infogrames, sees you selecting one of two main characters to set out on the trail of a murdered friend who is searching for ancient relics near the mysterious Shadow Island. You set out in fixed camera fashion into the dark night, looking for paths forward and piecing together clues as to the goings-on of the eerie manor. Before long, things get supernatural as strange creatures manifest and the island becomes a haunting ground. Right away you'll notice the flashlight effects look amazing, and the developers crafted their own graphics engine to accomplish this. Light takes a significant part in gameplay, making this a kind of mix between Resident Evil and Alan Wake before that game came out. There's a noir-like sense to the presentation, and the tank controls and beautiful camera angles are just how I like my survival horror. This game is really interesting and looks great on the Dreamcast. Definitely spending more time with this one, and would highly recommend checking it out for a non-Capcom take on the genre. Sticking with the Dreamcast, it's time for Nightmare Creatures 2, released in 2000. After the first game, I was curious to give this follow-up a try, and here we get a much more stylized sequel that starts with a pretty rockin' intro sequence. Gameplay once again follows suit, but sees you starting out as a patient inside a dilapidated genetics hospital. You grab your axe and bust out to do battle with mutated nightmare creatures and make your way through a century later London. Focusing once again on lock-on combat with Lovecraftian horror monsters, Nightmare Creatures 2 offers up some fun additions, such as fatality moves you can unleash on weakened enemies, which comes with their very own awesome VMU display sequence. Sure, the jank is still there, but I have respect for what they're going for. They had some cool artistic ideas, did some world building, and just drop you in to massacre weird monsters in a simple arcade-like manner. I really like busting doors open with my axe and seeing what bizarre horror show is coming up next. The PlayStation version actually seems to have better reviews, so maybe go that route, but I still had fun here on Sega's machine. Last up on the Dream, we have Ill Bleed, developed by the appropriately named Crazy Games in 2001. This very unique game starts you out as a high school student giving a wild speech about how your family ran a traveling horror-themed caravan, and your father would test out terrifying amusement gags on you, clearly causing some serious drama.
My mom couldn't stand how obsessed he'd gotten, so she thankfully divorced him when I was 6. Yet I had gotten attached to horror.
You meet up with your wicked cool friend group who just got tickets to the new It Place to Be, Ill Bleed, a new horror amusement park offering cash prizes to anyone who can survive. You're not exactly feeling the vibe and politely decline, but after your friends go missing, it's up to you to head to the park and do some digging. Once inside, you'll explore Ill Bleed's haunted attraction theaters, with the main area acting as a hub and the different cinemas acting as different stages. Entering a stage, you're provided with some pretty wild backstory and are given your objectives. Gameplay is really interesting and revolves around looking for items and identifying different haunts before they cause you harm. The way this works is you'll first want to look around and find the horror monitor. Once you have it, you can look around and scan for strangeness, and if you identify an occult occurrence before setting it off, you can collect its energy and progress throughout the level. If you get too close to an unscanned spook or specter, it will cause you harm and you can only take so much. You've got lots of status indicators to keep an eye on, and your senses will show when you might be getting close to something of interest. It's like being in a haunted house and trying to call it out before you see a scare coming. It's a really weird and interesting setup. It kind of feels like a Goosebumps, Fatal Frame, and Resident Evil mashup. Speaking of monster mashes, you'll occasionally be locked into a scenario where you have to fight for your life against fiendish frighteners. These can feel intense, and I have no idea what that green square is for. But once you're the last thing standing, you're free to move forward. As you move along, you get different items as clues or just the usual random free-roaming salad. This game is definitely its own thing, and it's a lot of fun to get into. Strange, cheeky, and unique, Illbleed is an experience like no other.
You never expect to die before your dreams come true. Neither did Jimmy or his father, Gail Banballow, a Minnesota innkeeper.
In 1989, video games were thriving and the side-scrolling platformer was king. As Mario introduced players to the simple joy of running and jumping through side-scrolling levels, another game would build on that foundation and change everything after. Prince of Persia, released initially for PC, is often referred to as the first cinematic platformer, offering a unique blend of fluid animation and smart game design. You play as the young love of the princess who's being held captive by the evil vizier Jafar. 1 hour is given to decide if she'll marry Jafar or meet her fate, and you must escape the depths of the dungeon you find yourself in, defeat Jafar, and save the princess before it's too late. This is more easily said than done because unlike most 2D games at the time that were all about momentum-based platforming, Prince of Persia was about precision. Players could climb up onto platforms and would need to parse smaller steps with large leaps to avoid traps and activate switches. It was all about tactile puzzle solving and feeling the danger and thrill of your adventure. Chaining movements together was absolutely key and felt really satisfying when done correctly. Combat was also a standout, feeling more like a proper duel than your run-of-the-mill button masher from the era. The game's unique animation style was brought to life through rotoscoping, which lended the overall presentation a real charm and authenticity which few games could match, and it drew a lot of praise from critics and players alike. Drawing inspiration from Arabian Nights literature and big-budget movies like Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Adventures of Robin Hood, the game had all the ingredients of an instant classic. And speaking on Robin Hood and rotoscoping, Soul game designer Jordan Mechner famously said this of his method for creating the game's swashbuckling sword fights. For a few seconds, the camera angle has them in exact profile. This was a godsend. I did my VHS 1-hour photo rotoscope procedure, spread 24 snapshots out on the floor of the office, and spent days poring over them trying to figure out what exactly was going on in that duel, how to conceptualize it into a repeatable pattern. So cool to see the lengths one man went to bring his vision to life. And that vision would pay off as Prince of Persia would of course find success and was later ported to lots of different platforms, with the SNES in particular getting a wonderful version that still looks and sounds excellent today. An official sequel, Prince of Persia 2: The Shadow and the Flame, would follow in 1993 for PC, and of course also come later to other platforms. And this one manages to impress even more, throwing you into action right out of the gate, with the overall presentation getting a really nice and colorful upgrade. Both of these games are held in high regard, and for good reason. Prince of Persia's influence would be felt for years, with games like Another World and Flashback pushing the genre even further, and that influence would even reach into 3D.
By 1999, many 2D icons had made the big jump to 3D. The Prince would follow suit with Mindscape's Prince of Persia 3D released for PC, and then later released as Prince of Persia Arabian Nights for the Sega Dreamcast. Original creator Jordan Mechner would consult on the project, but mostly let Mindscape take the reins. This is a 3D action-adventure game that plays a lot like Tomb Raider, which ironically plays a lot like the original Prince of Persia in 3D. The way Lara Croft requires precision input to jump, climb, and meticulously make her way through dungeon-like levels calls back to the original cinematic platformer, but evolves those core mechanics for 3D. Here, Prince of Persia 3D does much the same, and it does so well. I like the medieval Persian setting, and the graphics and gameplay are solid. It's one I've been really enjoying going back to check out since it mostly flew under the radar for a lot of gamers back in the day. And this makes sense since the game began development in 1997, and by 1999 the world had already gotten 4 Tomb Raider games and is similarly playing Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine, so it wasn't remembered quite as well. Not to mention Mario 64 and 96 redefining movement in 3D games. But just like Mario making one of the most impressive leaps to 3D, the Prince would return again, and this time he would change everything.
We'd all take more risks if we could control time. Rewind time. Freeze time. Controlling time is the ultimate power.
2003's Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time is a reboot of the original series with development duty being taken over by Ubisoft. Series creator Jordan Mechner would return, this time taking a much more hands-on approach as creative consultant, and the result would be one of the most memorable games of its generation. Right away you'll notice the art style and animation looks incredible. In keeping with the legacy from the classic games, the team here went above and beyond to bring something special to the players. And while it's not cel-shaded, the art style evokes a similar feel for me, especially played on a CRT, to something like a Disney or DreamWorks animation classic. Not in a way that feels wholly derivative, more so in a way that feels similarly timeless. It's a mix of excellent graphics geared toward an elevated sense of realism, with an incredible depth of animation. The world just feels colorful, alive, and fully realized, whereas follow-ups in the series went after that edgy early 2000s vibe. Sands of Time is aged like fine wine as opposed to 2004 Mountain Dew. Much like the DOS adventures the original shared space with, this reboot keeps in line with that colorful spirit and sense of grand adventure. When it comes to gameplay, Sands of Time blends ideas from the original games with brand new mechanics that would go on to inspire all of game design going forward. Just like in the originals where you go from screen to screen navigating different rooms, puzzles, and traps, Sands of Time parses out its levels similarly. Here you work through segmented areas before reaching your next save point, pushing forward in the overall narrative and on the journey of redemption you find yourself on. It's all about methodical movements, premonitions, and puzzle solving. And speaking of moves, the team here made sure the Prince would have everything he'd need.
We played a lot around with the idea of Persian ninja, acrobatic stuff. Basically, we came up with a character granted with a full range of movesets.
Your entire range of motion has been expanded from previous games, with a strong focus on acrobatics and larger-than-life abilities. One of those abilities, of course, was the wall run. Anyone who played video games in this era remembers the first time they saw this in action. As the Prince defies gravity, running with such cunning as to almost cling to the walls themselves, players could experience a whole new sense of movement. Being equal parts swashbuckling sword fighter and Jackie Chan, this Prince of Persia did indeed help popularize parkour in games. But unlike so many later games that would tack on the wall run as a gameplay gimmick to pad out their game design, Sands of Time made it integral, awe-inspiring, and oh so cool. Watching the cloth from an adorning banner sway as you brush by with those cinematic fixed camera changes practically felt like a rite of passage for early 2000s gamers. It was like you were lifting off from the constraints of older generations and taking off into gaming's future. I really love how the elevated sense of realism plays into the narrative and the gameplay.
We exaggerated the proportions of the tower on the rooms to create a more immersive and spooky universe. The Prince can interact with almost everything, so we had to justify the level design artistically.
The crumbling palace and ruins, the eccentric traps you're coerced into activating all have a reason for being, and it shows a care and thoughtfulness behind the team's designs. It all plays nicely within the story they're telling with the mechanics you're given to experience it. The fluidity, the animation, the graphics, it all just had that unmistakable magic you get every few generations from a team looking to push boundaries with a clear vision and drive to create something new. It's fantasy and fairy tale meets early 2000s action, and it's all just delightful. And in keeping with that 2002 aesthetic, you could of course manipulate time itself. As the Matrix led to Max Payne, slowing time at the press of a button became a big deal in games, and then Ubisoft's Sands of Time took things a step further. With the Dagger of Time at your disposal, you could slow time to give yourself a leg up on timed events, or decelerate the onslaught of combat. Certain areas have you turning on a trial of traps that also activate a door that will begin to slowly close, and having this ability can come in handy here. Where they really expanded on the idea of holding power over time though was with the rewind. Holding a button allows you to rewind the flow of time up to a certain point, giving players essentially a limited number of redos. This was great for taking a better stab at a bad leap, or completely changing the tide of combat. Where so much gameplay relied on precision movements, this was a great addition that blew people away at the time, and it just looked cool. Where this could have been just a fun gimmick, the team found a clever way to weave the mechanic into gameplay, as you can only rewind when you have enough sand in the dagger's tank. You collect sand by defeating enemies or by finding clouds along the way. Sand tanks power special moves or can rewind time, and choosing when to use what in combat can determine the outcome. Especially in later levels where fights get more intense. I'm sure you could beat the game without ever using your powers, but having them there gives you options, and that makes for a more fun and playful experience overall. So the game looked great, played great, and had plenty of flourishes, like in its lighting. I love the way light pours in softly from the palace windows, or the orange glow of enemies lighting a battle at night. The way torchlight spills up onto your character as you walk a tightrope in a dark room, or the caustics of water dancing across the palace walls. It all just had that grand fantasy adventure feel, and by the end you'll feel like you've been on a real journey. Little additions add to this, like how your outfit changes over time, reflecting all the trials you faced in the hours spent battling your way up the tower. The way day turns to night and night back to day lends a real sense of time and tribulation to your story of redemption. Like the prince and princess have been at this non-stop for days, trying to undo the horrors you've unwittingly wrought. The Sands of Time reaches some real heights, and you could feel it toward the end. When you're closing in on the top of the twisted tower and it's just you and the twilight sun, making huge leaps into the atmosphere to make your way back to the hourglass, you feel it. The sense of dread and adventure being up in the clouds with only your will to keep going pushing you onward and out of the depths. I love the pacing in general and how each new beat feels earned. I like how your relationship with Farah changes over time, even though you are directly responsible for obliterating everything in her world. By the end, your young arrogance turns to selfless action, and the story wraps up in a beautiful way. The whole experience just has weight to it, and it stays with you when you're done. All in all, the team behind Prince of Persia managed to make something that really stood the test of time. Following in the footsteps of the original cinematic platformer, they crafted one of the best ever made. They did such a good job creating a Disney-like classic that Disney themselves had to come knocking and actually make a live-action Prince of Persia in 2010. As for the best way to experience Sands of Time, if you're playing on console on a modern TV, I'd recommend playing the original Xbox version via backwards compatibility like I'm doing here on Xbox 360. There is a bit of slowdown on the 360, but you get a nice upscale that still has some of the softer analog characteristics I think fits the art style really well. I'd recommend the GameCube version if you're playing on a CRT, with your best bet today probably being just playing on PC if you want to bump up performance and resolution and all of that. There is of course the HD trilogy on PS3 that should be great, and looks great, if not a bit over sharp, but has very broken audio due to a surround sound bug that makes the game sound like it's being yelled through a tin can. People People say you can fix this by turning off any 5.1 options in your PS3 system settings and turning on multi-channel out, but it didn't do much for me. Prince of Persia would go on to be rebooted 2 more times, with 2008's action-heavy Prince of Persia and 2024's Metroid-like platformer, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, which is an excellent return to form for the series. Much like Mario 64, Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time took an original game changer and broke the mold again, creating something so cohesive and innovative it defined its generation and would go on to inspire others. It remains a timeless treasure today, more so than its sequels in the way it honors its DOS adventure roots with beautiful art and animation that feels like a cinematic classic. The game would go on to become so beloved, a remaster is forthcoming. And no matter how that turns out, this original, while all about a prince and a princess, still plays like a king.
A king and his son have defeated a mighty empire, inheriting an extravagant hourglass and a mysterious dagger that contain the mystical powers of the Sands of Time.
Inside the hourglass is a marvel that no living man has seen. Only the dagger can unlock the Sands of Time, and it belongs to a greater one than I.
But when the prince is tricked into releasing an ancient and evil curse,
you have unleashed the Sands of Time. I can undo what you have done. Give me the dagger.
He'll have to put his faith in a woman he has no reason to trust.
My father's army sacked your palace, captured you as a slave. You have every reason to hate me. Now you want me to trust you.
Go on! There's no time!
Half-Life. So named for the time it takes for the radioactivity of a specified isotope to fall to half its original value, has, despite its name and iconic lambda symbol being rooted in decay, only thrived in the years since its original release. As a PC-centric first-person gaming classic, Half-Life left behind conventional shooter norms of the day, opting instead for a fluid player-driven experience that unfolds with spectacular scripting within a rich world to survive and explore. Valve president Gabe Newell's hope was that building engrossing worlds and characters would be more compelling than building a straightforward shooting gallery, and that hope and commitment to innovation paid off. Half-Life would go on to become one of the most influential and beloved games of all time, and most people who know of it have probably played it on PC. But did you know in 2001, Half-Life actually made its way to home console? Released officially for the PlayStation 2, this version that you've been seeing is the one I want to show today and talk a little about Half-Life as a whole. I still don't think a lot of people, including myself until the last year or so, knew this classic came to the PlayStation 2, and it's actually a really fun port. Sure, Half-Life is known as a PC game first and foremost, and that's still the best way to play it today, but Half-Life on PS2 has a lot of its own charm, impressing in the sheer fact that it exists, and even improves on a few things along the way. Around the back of the box, you'll see the game boasting of its incredible action, extraordinary realism, unparalleled AI with advanced graphics and animation. GameOfTheYear.com indeed. And this isn't just early 2000s hyperbole. All of these things defined Half-Life in the way it broke so much ground for its time. And the character and in-game models have indeed gotten an upgrade from the original PC release. You'll also see a new mode has been added in the form of Half-Life Decay, which is a new co-op campaign where you and a friend take up the reins of 2 scientists in the Black Mesa facility, working together to engage in combat and solve puzzles amidst the chaos of the Resonance Cascade. And it's said if you get an A grade on every mission, you can play as the titular Vortigaunts in Decay, unlocking the ability to play as one in the main game as well. Good stuff. There's also a straightforward head-to-head multiplayer mode which can make for a pretty good time as well. As for the main game, it looks and plays like Half-Life on PS2, which I find to be incredibly endearing. Sure, it's not as sharp as PC and of course doesn't run as smooth, but there's something about the PS2 presentation I really like. especially played here through a retro Tink 5X with its excellent deinterlacing of the PlayStation signature 480i output. It looks really nice and feels great played on a gamepad. And that's another of this version's biggest selling points for me. Yes, I know the game was made for the PC experience, but I've always just been more comfortable on the couch with a gamepad in hand than sitting at a desk maneuvering multiple keys and a mouse. However, they did cover their bases here for the purists, this being one of the few games to fully support mouse and keyboard through USB on the PS2, and that's just awesome. Another unexpected addition can be found in the video options, as the game can natively output 16:9 widescreen if your setup can support it, and again, this was not at all common at the time. Played here on the Tink 5X, which supports widescreen, the game looks great and doesn't seem to hitch up performance at all. And here's where I just want to talk about Half-Life in general, because I've been really enjoying playing through the game this way. Right from the outset, the game does so much heavy lifting in its world building without so much as one intrusive cutscene. The game just unfolds with Valve's more show, less tell approach. Its mix of sci-fi nerdiness, alien horror, and action hero movie aesthetics inside such a rich and detailed world have made it an absolute legend for good reason. You'll often hear sci-fi nerds talk about lived-in worlds, and Valve really figured out how to bring that to life. The way the story unfolds through your progression, blending scripted events and open exploration, is a thing of beauty. The inclusion of light puzzle solving speaks to Gordon Freeman's thinking man's hero motif. As a man with a PhD in theoretical physics, he's more than just Rambo in a hazmat suit, and I like that. Everything about this era of first-person gaming I just adore, when it was all about aliens and the otherworldly, the demonic and the supernatural. Half-Life is a game that's really hard to put down once you start a new campaign, and that speaks to its enduring quality over so many decades. Yes, you can play better versions of this game on PC, but look at this. It's Half-Life on the PlayStation 2, how cool is that? Paired with the excellent ways you can pull video to an HD TV these days with the right setup, it's more fun than ever to go back and revisit what was and also what could have been. Like Half-Life on the Dreamcast, which was marketed and in development up until its eventual cancellation so they could focus on the PS2 version. The seemingly fully finished game was leaked, however, as you're seeing here, and it looks great with the Dreamcast 480p VGA output. There is some frequent loading and performance hitching, but nothing that makes the game unplayable. I'd love to see this one optimized even farther by the Dreamcast talented modding community. It even includes the Blue Shift expansion campaign, and also has mouse and keyboard support, so this could have been a really nice complete edition. Ah well, Half-Life did officially make its way home on Sony's machine. And now, I can always pop the disc in and take a train ride into a place where it's always a comfortable 68 degrees. Aliens have crossed over into your dimension, and the government wants to nuke you and everyone else who knows about their top secret plans. This is one I'm so happy to have in my collection.
Greetings. My God, what are you doing?